what's happening, people? Welcome to the Cassius Humorous Show, episode number 43. I'm your host. Today's Friday, October 14th, 2016 at 3:17 p.m. and we're broadcasting from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, the ever snowy Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. We just got hit with the dump last night. What a nightmare, folks, I'll tell you. The worst part about it is not the actual weather itself, is the fact that every time this happens, people act surprised. You ever notice that? I can't believe it's winter. I can't believe it's snowing. Why can't you believe it? You could believe it the December before this, or before that, or before that, or the next December that we're going to have after this. There's no surprise. It's snowing. You know, just like your one aunt who gets too drunk at the Christmas party, these things happen every year. It doesn't really matter. Today on the podcast, I have an interview with a very, very interesting guy. He's a really cool character. His name's Kofi Baker. He's a professional drummer, and his band, the Kofi Baker's Cream Experience, is actually on tour right now. You can check out those dates on Kofi's website. All those links are, by the way, on cassiusmorris.com in the episode description. He's also the son of Ginger Baker, one of the most legendary percussionists of all time, widely acclaimed as possibly even the best drummer of all time, and, of course, the pioneer for the music of Cream. Just incredible music. If you guys know anything about me, you know that I love psychedelic rock and I love Cream. I'm so much respect for Kofi and his father, and it was a pleasure to have him on the program. I talked to him about a couple things. I talked to him about what it's like to be the son of a legendary rock star, you know, one of the best drummers of all time, being taught by him. He tells me stories about when he lived with his father out in Colorado many years back. And, you know, just living with Ginger Baker for about a year or two as an adult, you know, just all the anything you would expect to happen, it's 10 times crazier. He tells a couple stories about his father almost setting him on fire, a couple beatings, and much, much more. Pretty crazy stuff. I mean, pretty jaw-dropping stuff. I also asked him to give me a reaction to Ace Frehley's White Room. Ace Frehley, of course, the guitarist of Kiss, original guitarist of Kiss, had his solo album Origins Volume 1, and he did a cover of Cream's White Room. So I tried to get Kofi's reaction on that, and I also asked him for his father's reaction to see if he's heard the track. I also asked him about the influence of drugs in music, because, of course, you know, his father and his band are notorious for using heroin and many other substances, even during their live performances, especially also while they were recording. So I asked him about that, and we talk about a bunch more, just stuff about playing the drums and being a professional drummer and him teaching lessons. We talk about his book, The Forgotten Foot. Lots of content, even more than that in this episode. So we're just going to get straight into it, folks. I thank you for joining me, and here is my chat with Kofi Baker. Ladies and gentlemen, we are joined this afternoon by Kofi Baker. Hey man, how's it going?
Hello, how you doing?
Doing great, how about you?
Great, yes, living in Indiana, Midwest. And you're in Canada, right?
That's right, Alberta, Canada.
Oh, great. So it gets cold up there, right?
Yeah, it's actually starting to get cold right now. We're reaching that season, unfortunately, but we're making do with our time inside.
Right, yeah, because I toured up there with Uli John Roth about a couple of years ago,
right.
Toured through Canada. And it was really cold and snowy.
Where is Canada on your list of favorite places to tour? You don't have to say it's high just because I'm in Canada.
No, I like Canada, but I prefer to tour in the summer, yeah, because, I mean, you have like 6 months of winter up there. So, yeah, I know quite a few people in Canada. I've toured Canada quite a few times. So, yeah, I like it. I mean, I first toured Canada in 1988, and it was the first time I ever came to that kind of area, and it was like being in America to me, because it's very Americanized. It's like being in America.
It's very, very similar, yeah.
Yeah, so that was the first time I ever came close to America. It was Canada. I came to Canada before I ever came to America. So I thought it was really cool. I mean, I liked it. Just the weather, you know, we need to tilt the planet a little bit more towards the sun, so Canada can get some more better weather.
Man, you have no clue how many times I'd wish that would happen. Hey, by the way, Kofi, let me ask you a question. You mentioned that you toured Canada back in the 80s and 90s. Can you tell me what's the main difference, if any, that you've noticed between audiences back in the 80s and 90s compared to audiences today? What are the main differences?
It's still good. Canada's, I mean, when I toured with Uli a couple of years ago, the crowds were still really appreciative of music and really good.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it hasn't really changed that much. I think Canada's Canada's good to tour because they like music. They are into it. You know, it's like Germany. I like playing Germany too because Germany, they're very appreciative. California is probably the worst place to play.
Really?
California, they tend to just like, you know, not really get into it.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the time the audiences get caught up in their social media. You know, I'm guilty of this myself. I spend a lot of time periscoping during shows, but, you know, it must be nice to see the audience engage. Let's take it way back to actually your first performance. I want to talk about that. You were on the Old Grey Whistle Test TV show with your father, Ginger Baker. You were 6 years old. Do you remember anything about this?
Well, not really remembering a lot about that. I just remember I got on stage, the roadie said, yeah, get up there and play. When the people started coming in, I kind of freaked out and ran away. So it wasn't very long. I'd never seen the video, so I'm not sure anything about that. But, yeah, I mean, I just know that that's what happened, but I'm not sure where it exactly was. And if anybody's out there that's seen it, I'd like to get a copy. It would be interesting to see.
Oh, yeah, no, most definitely. That's something that I would want too if I was you.
Yeah, but my dad is kind of he's kind of a hard guy to play with. You know, I've done a lot of gigs with him. I started playing with him when I was very young, like 13, 14. We did a gig in Italy together, 2 drums.
Wow.
But, you know, when I play drums with my dad, I have to kind of back him. I have to play behind him and everything, not show him up. Otherwise, he gets very annoyed.
Yeah, I've definitely heard a couple stories about your father when he gets annoyed. That wouldn't be too good. You know, obviously you're well aware of this. You know, so much respect for your father. What's it like playing with an all-time legend? It must be incredible, right?
It's really good. I mean, I was just telling some of my students, I teach a lot, and they were saying I have a book out called The Forgotten Foot, and it's basically trying to teach people how to play with all their 4 limbs. Because the first thing my dad taught me as a drummer was to have my feet going.
Right.
And unfortunately nowadays, see, the drumming that people do nowadays, they learn from listening to people like my dad, you know, John Bonham, Keith Moon, all those drummers from those eras, and they listened to them and they kind of copied what they played, and then they became teachers themselves.
Right.
But they missed the whole thing that, like my dad and all those people, you know, Charlie Watts, they all came from jazz. Mm-hmm. They all were jazz drummers. So, you know, when you learn jazz first, you have to learn with your feet because jazz, the left foot's a very important part in jazz. So people like my dad took that jazz playing and then put it onto double bass drums. So a lot of that left foot technique is from playing jazz. So the drummers of today, when they listen to it, they don't know which foot's doing which. They just lead with their right foot because most people are right-footed and right-handed. Mm-hmm. And it's actually backwards. People like my dad and all those drummers, they led with their left foot. If you listen to like John Bonham on those people, their left foot's keeping the hi-hats going all the time.
Right.
And that's kind of missing in a lot of drummers today. There's still a few good drummers out there that carry it, like Chad Smith from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. There's a drummer that, you know, has his left foot going all the time and can play. Is a good drummer. But a lot of these drummers, you know, they don't know that you got to kind of learn the first stuff first and then go into the rock stuff.
Right. So many people just kind of want to pick up a pair of sticks and become a drummer, but the reality is there's lots of rudiments and, you know, the paradiddle, all these things you have to learn to get there. So, you know, me speaking as a drummer, you know, I kind of slack off on that. I don't read music or anything, but that's something I'd like to learn. Let me ask you about the influence of African polyrhythms and you and your father's playing. What can you tell me about that?
Right, well, that's, again, the polyrhythm thing my dad learned very young from Phil Seaman, was the polyrhythms, because it's, you know, drumming, you have to have polyrhythms. Even if you're playing keyboard, you need to have... Classical music uses polyrhythms. Mm-hmm. It's like, for instance, like the Beatles, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. You think that that's 2 different tempos of a song. You've got that 6th part, and then you go into the you know, the other part. It's actually a 2 against 3 polyrhythm. Both the rhythms are together. The producer that got hold of the Beatles knew this stuff, and that's what made the Beatles so interesting, was the polyrhythmical stuff that was put into it. So that's been around for a long time. Classical music uses it a lot. The Africans used it first, obviously, because drumming comes from Africa, and that would be, you know, one person would be playing a 3 rhythm and another person playing a 4 over the top. You get like cut past the goddamn butter, which is which is the 3 against 4. And you've got 2 against 3, you can get into the weirder ones. But all those polyrhythms are really used because it's layering one thing over another. And that's how classical music works. Classical music uses polyrhythms throughout it, all of it. Rock music, that tends to not use it, except for if you listen to a tune like Jungle Boogie, that's a polyrhythm. The melody line is a 3/4 over a 3-beat. It's a polyrhythm.
Okay.
So it is used in music, but people don't really know, how it's used. And if you learn the polyrhythms, it can open up your music writing a lot better.
Wow.
So it's really worth learning to learn all your 2/3s and 3/4s. And if you're a musician, even if you're a guitar player or a keyboard player or a kazoo player, rhythms and phrasing is very important. You can know all the notes in the world, but if you can't phrase them very well, it's not going to sound very good.
Right.
So it's worth learning all that stuff. And like I said, I have a book out called The Forgotten Foot, which is kind of shows all that kind of, how to learn all the polyrhythms and your feet and all that kind of stuff and go for it. Because my dad was, not the best person to take lessons from. It was I had to learn it pretty quickly or I got beaten.
Really?
And screamed at. Yeah, it was, if I taught people the way my dad taught me, I'd have no students at all. Because, it's like when I learned to, if I wanted to learn something, I'd have to be very tactful how I would. Like recently, well, not recently, but like 20 years ago in Colorado, I said, let's go over tuning drums, Let's just go over it. And my dad looks at me like with a glare in his face of like, what the hell? And he picks up a drum key and throws it at the drum and goes, this is what you need, and throws it at the drum and stomps out. That was like, my lesson for tuning drums.
Oh, okay, so, wow, quite the lesson.
Yeah, he's interesting person to take lessons from. I had a tape of me taking lessons from him in Italy, and I brought it back home and played it to my mum, and my mum had to laugh her head off because it was we were doing something, and then you hear my dad go, no, effing this and effing that, and he'd slam. It's like, if I got something wrong, it would be I'd have hell to pay.
Sounds quite intimidating.
Yeah, well, he was very much like that. I don't know if he taught everybody like that, but he definitely taught me with fear. I mean, back in those days anyway, you were scared of your parents. Your parents told you to do something, you did it. You didn't argue with them. You got smacked. Back nowadays, your kids will sue you.
Exactly.
If you shout at them, they'll take you to court for stress. So back in those days, it was kind of like you feared your parents anyway. So taking lessons from someone like that was definitely I definitely learned by fear, but it made me learn really quick.
Right.
I had to get it right really, really quickly. Otherwise it was, I wouldn't get a lesson again. So, it was fun though. I mean, he's a hilarious character. I mean, he I don't know if he has much of a sense of humor, but he definitely he's fun to see the things he does.
No, I definitely agree.
I'll give, since it's a comedy show, I'll give you a insight in some funny stuff.
Okay.
Like in Italy, they have things called stufas, which is a fireplace. Like you can cook on it, and it has a tube that goes through the house and heats the house.
Mm-hmm.
So to light the stufa, you have to put wood in there, and you have to, put a bit of gasoline on it. Of course, my dad would be getting pissed off with the gasoline can or something, so gas would be going everywhere. and I'm seeing like gas all over his hands, all over his clothes, all over everything, and he's about to light a match. And it's like, well, you know what's going to happen. So, he lights a match. Of course, he catches fire.
Wow.
And that's pretty funny to watch. But the funniest one was I was outside of the house, and my dad was going to light the stufa, and I just left the house. I'm like, I'm out here. So I left the house. I was outside, and I hear this big explosion. I see the cap that's on the top of the tube that comes out of the roof of the house for the stufa fly off, and big explosion. And my dad comes out with half a moustache and half an eyebrow, and blown himself up. So that was pretty funny.
Oh my gosh, it's like living in a sitcom.
Yeah, I mean, we'd run out of gas in the middle of Italy, in the middle of the dark. You can't see anything. He sends me in the back of the truck to get a gas can. I get the gas can. He makes a funnel out of a piece of paper, makes a funnel, and has me pouring gas in, and then he's like gets pissed off, so he starts pouring the gas in, and so he's pouring the gas in this funnel, and I'm holding the funnel, and there's gas going everywhere. It's going all over me. It's drenching me with gas, and while he's doing this, he's smoking a cigarette.
Oh, great!
And I'm 15 years old, thinking this isn't smart. I mean, I'm 15, thinking all it's going to take is a cigarette cinder to catch me, and I'm up in flames. That's my dad for you. He's a pretty wild character.
Those are some pretty wild experiences, man. I mean, I can't even imagine, living with Ginger Baker would be, you must have countless stories that, you haven't even probably told yet.
I could go on forever with stories like that about my dad, but looking back at it, it's pretty funny. I mean, at the time I was scared shitless, but looking back at a lot of these things, it's pretty funny.
Okay, so you'd say over time it almost becomes comical in a way.
Yeah.
So once again, let's go back just a little bit. Can you tell me about when you were first exposed to your father's music and how it affected you?
Well, we didn't really... me and my sister found a quarter-inch recorder in the loft and some quarter-inch tape and a microphone. And we put the tape on, and there was like stuff about presence of the Lord and all this kind of stuff. So we thought, screw that. So we taped over it. With all silly stuff that we were recording and everything. So I think we recorded over the master quarter-inch mixdowns of Blind Faith with silliness on tape. God knows what happened to those tapes now. But I don't think we really understood. Having gold discs on the walls and stuff like that just seemed normal. Having your walls different color, every wall a different color in your house seemed normal as well. It's like you go to other people's houses and you're like, why are your walls all the same color?
Right.
And why don't you have gold discs on the walls? We have these gold discs and platinum discs on the walls. So you don't really think it's anything different because you're growing up with it. And the music, I don't think I really realized that much until I got older about what it was and everything. As a kid, you kind of, it's just normal that, your dad plays music and your dad has, lots of different girlfriends and takes tons of drugs. I always say a funny thing about, me and my sister trying to find drugs, and we go around the neighborhood. We go around the neighborhood trying to find drugs to, try them out, and we couldn't find any anywhere. And we say to the dealers, why do you have no drugs? And they go, because your parents came here 2 hours before and bought everything we had.
Right.
That's just to show how much, drugs our parents did.
Actually, that was something I wanted to ask you about. When you take a look back at your father's era, so many of the artists, including himself and his group, and, almost all the other rock bands at the time were using either psychedelic drugs or opioids, marijuana, saying that it improved their creativity and helped them play, helped them with songwriting. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that any kind of drugs can help the creative process when it comes to music?
Well, stuff like heroin was taken by a lot of those musicians because it took away all your inhibitions. Mm-hmm. Heroin would, you could go on stage and you wouldn't be nervous. So that was the main reason they did that. But unfortunately, with stuff like that, it takes its toll on you. So at first it might, make you play really good. My dad told me a story of when he first took heroin when he was playing. People said it's the best he ever played when he was high on heroin. And they thought, wow, that's it. I found the answer. But what happens is, okay, it might open you out. It might take away all your inhibitions. You might not be scared and you play great. But then, a month down the line, you need the heroin just to get out of bed, So I would say that in moderation, probably good. But stay with, things like, pot is probably the best thing for that because it's not non-addictive.
Yeah.
Heroin is addictive. All painkillers, all that kind of stuff is addictive. And that's why I like the fact that nowadays, people like in California, they can get a pot card for bad backs and stuff like that because I know that, for back pain and things like that, it's the best thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I really think that you should be able to play straight and not have to have drugs to enhance, your playing. obviously if you're under the influence of any kind of drug, you're, probably going to be a bit more sloppy than you would be if you're straight.
Right.
Yes, I agree that, LSD and all that kind of stuff is probably well known for giving humans a lot more insight. All the paintings on cave walls and stuff and all that kind of stuff was all done, psychedelics apparently. And so, it's a very touchy thing. In moderation, anything in moderation is probably fine.
Yeah.
But people overdo stuff, you can drink too much water and die. You can breathe in too much air and die. So it's a balance between stuff. I would say if people are going to take drugs, don't take hard drugs. Definitely stay away from heroin unless you're, 90 years old and you're really decrepit, and then you can become a heroin addict to get rid of the pain, and who cares at 90?
Right.
But, that's the thing. That's the problem with drugs, is people take drugs just to make themselves feel better even though they're okay, just to make themselves high. And I think that's, the bad thing. I think if you feel good, why do you need drugs?
Right.
If you need, like cocaine is good if you have toothache. Everything can be used for medicinal purpose.
Yeah.
I like playing gigs straight because I like, I hate it when my guitar player gets too drunk on stage and gets sloppy. Because you have to, you're playing for people. You want it to be good. So, it's good to, and you can get the same attitude from heroin in with being straight if you just have the right attitude when you go on stage.
Well, I mean, you raise a very good point there. I mean, I can only imagine if you're the drummer and your guitarist is on heroin and your bassist is drunk, things are going to get pretty aggravating, right?
I mean, Cream played, they were so out of their heads when they played. It was ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, they were like, on LSD, and I don't know how they even played. But if you listen to some of those live recordings of Cream, it was pretty sloppy. But yeah, they were definitely going places that they probably wouldn't have gone if they were straight. Because it was pretty wild jamming. I mean, they were well known for playing 3 hours, 2 songs or something.
I'll make you my love, the light shining through on you. I'm with you, my love. It's the morning, just we two. I'm gonna stay with you.
Like I said, I think pot should be legalized everywhere.
I agree.
I think it's insane that alcohol is legal and pot's illegal.
Yeah.
When alcohol, you get drunk, you lose coordination. People that are stoned actually are more, they drive slower, and they're more aware of everything, because it's like, wow, look, they're probably driving at 10 miles an hour.
Right.
Or someone drunk's probably driving at 110 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So...
well, we're lucky out here because we're looking at countrywide legalization here in Canada, so that's good.
Oh, great, really?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm moving to Canada.
There you go. We'll see you here.
Well, yeah, you probably need pot in the winter just to get through the winter, though. I mean, you got 6 months of winter. Okay, I'm going to get stoned now.
Yeah, what do you think I've been doing in here for the last 6 months?
Right, yeah, exactly. Got to do something to get through it. But, I wish they would legalize pot everywhere and make alcohol more illegal, or make it, harder for people to drive and drink, because that's the worst thing, is people drunk and driving.
It's too easy to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, because it's just unbelievable that you can go to a bar and get drunk out of your head legally, and how do you think you're going to get home? I mean, good job you've got Uber drivers now and all that kind of stuff, which is, good, but, they did that test with pot, with video games, and the people that played the video game stoned got higher scores than anybody else.
Well, yeah, it helps you focus in on the concentration.
Right, and with practicing, I think that's, as a kid, I was a pothead as a kid, and I think that's what made me do 8-9 hours practice a day, was I'd wake up, get stoned and just play drums all day and practice. And you can do the repetitive motion over and over again and not be quite so bored. If you're straight, it's harder to sit there for 2 or 3 hours on one exercise and just get it down.
Right. No,
that's another thing that kids of today don't understand is when you learn something, okay, I've learned this exercise, okay, next. You've got to practice that exercise over and over again till it's so ingrained into you that, it's natural. You can play it on any situation.
No, that's very true.
People don't, they don't get that. They think, I've had this, okay, I can go do it, and it's nothing worse than playing something sloppy. You want to be playing it tight.
Yeah.
So you have to, it's all to do with the brain and how the brain works. When you learn something new, the brain builds a new synapse. It's building pathways across synapses. So if you keep practicing it over and over again, you use that wire a lot, it becomes a sturdy connection between synapses. And that's what practicing does. It makes the brain, gets those wires hard and wired. Now, this is the problem with Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's disease is caused by what happens when you get older is you get into a routine and you don't really get out of your routine much. So your brain hardwires at a certain routine. And as you're not learning anything new anymore, you're not building new pathways. So your brain starts dying off the parts it doesn't need.
Yeah.
And that's Alzheimer's. So that's why I say to everybody, always, try to learn something new, push your brain. If you're right-handed and you ever tried cleaning your teeth with your left hand, it's difficult because your brain has to think of things differently. It has to rewire. So when you're learning something new in any instrument, what you're learning, when people say, I get so frustrated, it's like, that's good. If you're learning something that's difficult and feels uncomfortable, your brain is having to work.
Yeah.
So you keep practicing it until it becomes comfortable, and then you've learned a whole new thing. So, some people just give up and go, I feel frustrated, and they just stop. I'm like, when I'm teaching myself and I get frustrated with something, that's great. I get the opposite of frustrated. I'm happy.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, I'm pushing myself to learn a new thing. And you always want to keep learning. You never want to stop. That's what I think happens with a lot of these musicians. They get, especially like my dad, who became the best drummer in the world. Once you become, I'm the best drummer in the world, what do I have to do from here? I don't need to practice anymore. I don't need to learn anymore.
Right.
I think that's wrong. I'm always practicing, and every year I'm a better drummer than I was the year before. So I'm always pushing myself to learn more stuff and keep growing, because I think that's what it's all about.
Right. So I guess you'd say that musical growth is not something that is a hill that can be climbed. It's something that you're going to have to keep growing and keep progressing if you want to stay good in this industry, right?
Yeah, well, the industry has changed a lot.
That's true.
With the digital stuff now, you don't really have to be that great at playing. You can quantize yourself. You can edit yourself. You can take one bar that sounds good and loop that bar, and you can fix things with the amount of technology now. So, but live, definitely playing live. This is why I would never go see a band like Britney Spears or someone like that, or Yanni or someone like that, because it's all DAT tapes. It's all they're all miming. They're all miming to the music, and it's, to me, that's like, well, why don't you just go put the album on and go watch a video of it? So a
lot more cost efficient, that's for sure.
Right. I think live music should be going back to how it was in my dad's era, where the only thing you're hearing is the musician, what he's producing on the stage.
Yeah.
And that way you have good quality musicians, and they should be, jamming, I think, is really where it's at, improvisation. When you come see my band, my Cream Experience band, 50-60% of the night is original stuff, because we're improvising. Mm-hmm. We're playing the song, but then we improvise. But that's why you have to have really good musicians, and I always use top quality musicians with all my music, so so that I can improvise and my bass player and guitar player can keep up. And,
right.
And Cream, Jack was a jazz player, my dad was a jazz player, and Eric was a blues player. So you had two jazz players, idea with the blues rock kind of music to it.
Yeah, it was a great fusion.
Yeah, my dad made a conscious effort to actually make money at that point, so to make music more commercially viable. So he took his jazz ideas, and my dad was a lot more involved in the music than people think. I mean, he can write treble and clef and bass clef out. He's a lot more, understanding of that kind of stuff. And, White Room, a 5/4 bolero. Who do you think wrote the 5/4 bolero?
Mm-hmm.
That was my dad. Sunshine of Your Love, the whole backwards beat thing. That made that song what it is.
Exactly. That's very true.
And people, my dad's pissed off about that because he doesn't get the royalties that Jack gets. And as far as I know, he sold all his royalties to Jack anyway.
Right.
So, I think he's probably pissed off about a lot of that stuff. But,
by the way, you mentioned White Room. I was just wondering, has you or your father heard Ace Frehley of Kiss's newer version of White Room? And if so, can you share your thoughts?
I've heard it. I don't know if my dad has heard it. If he had heard it, I can tell you what he would say, and I wouldn't repeat it. It's okay. But I mean, it loses that jam, that whole what they were about, taking a really good musicianship, and that's why they called themselves Cream, because of the cream of the crop. But then you've got people like Ace Frehley. I'm sorry, Ace Frehley. I know he's a guitar player. I play with his guitar player. Sure, he's a great guy and everything, but he's not like, a world's most amazing musician.
Yeah.
So it's, they're good. I mean, Kiss was, they had a cool thing. But, the Cream was about really good musicianship. It was like taking the cream of the musicians and seeing what they could do. So that's kind of, what I'm at when I copy the music. I take that attitude and I change it a little bit too. I mean, Cream played it differently every time.
Right.
And that's the thing. You don't really want to play it the same all the time. I mean, look at the Reunion. The Reunion sounded completely different than Cream 20 years ago. They all, they calmed down a lot, but they played it their own, that style of the way they were playing it.
Definitely.
I mean, people were all saying, oh, Eric played the wrong guitar and he had the wrong amp. And it's like, you know what? I mean, people move on. You can't just do it that way. You got to evolve with how things evolve.
That's what the records are for, right?
Right, exactly. So I think people misunderstand a lot of that about, especially if you see tribute bands. I can't stand seeing a tribute band that play exactly like the record or play exactly like this. It's like, well, Cream never played it exactly like the record anyway.
Right.
So it's like you can't, I mean, it's just pointless. It's been done like that. It's already been done.
Exactly.
Take that, I mean, I heard the Ace Frehley thing, and I think he changed it a little bit, but I think it's pretty much the same kind of tempo, the same kind of song, if I remember.
It is, yeah. It's very, very similar, and that's one thing that I noticed too, is that it kind of lacks a bit of a twist, of originality.
Right, yeah. I mean, it's kind of like a generic model of the song, which if you're going to take a song and redo it, change the tempo, put it in 12/8, swing it, do something, make it, take it, make it your own. Take song and make it your own. Don't copy it, try and copy it, because it's already been done, and the original was as good as it gets, I think, as that what they were doing was great. So why try to reproduce that?
No, I'd agree. I wonder what Ace's reaction is going to be, being that he's such a huge Cream fan.
Well, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I'm sure he's a nice guy and he's everything's good, but I just think that's what's missing in the music is make it your own and do your own thing. Because if he was a Cream fan, he probably would have realized that Cream were improvisation musicians. They improvised and that kind of stuff. I don't think Ace Frehley is really that kind of a musician. I don't really know him. Yeah. So if he's out there and he's listening, contact me, give me a call. I know his guitar player. I play with his guitar player doing the Cream stuff. And his guitar player, actually, the guy who plays with him, is really cool, a really cool guy, and he actually improvises great. I'm sure Ace is probably good. I'm sure he just purposely did the song as close to Cream as he wanted because he wanted to, sound like Cream, maybe. I don't know.
Fair enough. So nothing personal directed at Ace, but you just your thoughts.
Yeah, just my thoughts. I just think if you're going to redo a tune, really, really redo it. Make it something different. Put your own sound on it.
Oh, yeah, I see where you're coming from. It's fair enough. You were talking about how you were doing your own concerts with the Cream Experience Band. As a fan, in terms of the concerts that you've gone to, as an audience member, who put on the best show and why?
Well, again, I mean, it's some of the best concerts I go to is like the improvisation, like the Baked Potato. I used to go to the Baked Potato in Hollywood all the time to see bands. And that's the kind of stuff I liked. I mean, I don't really go for these concerts that look really good because they have put a lot of lights and a lot of stuff in. It's like Jason Bonham's Led Zeppelin experience.
Right.
Nothing bad to say about Jason, but I went to go see him play and at the Arcada in Chicago. And after the gig, I went to say hi to him because I knew him as a kid, and he completely blew me off and didn't even come out of his bus or anything. So I don't quite know what his deal was, but his concert just seemed to me like a copy of Led Zeppelin, and it was trying to have all the videos and all the lights and all the spectacular stuff but it just sounded like a Led Zeppelin cover band to me. This is just what it sounded like. So I didn't really think that was that great of a concert. I mean, not to pipe my own thing, but if you go see my concert, you get to actually see really good musicians jamming their asses off and, doing something new rather than just doing the whole Cream trying to sound like Cream.
There seems to be a pretty distinct difference between cover band and tribute band.
Yeah, I mean, I call mine a Cream experience because it's the experience of the music, not a tribute. We don't dress up or try to sound like Cream, and we do. My guitar player is definitely influenced by Cream, so he plays the riffs. He uses the key riffs. Like in the solos, he'll hit the key parts, but then you jam off. So you hit the key parts to make people hear the song, but then you make it your own. So that's why I say it's a bit more experience. Jason Bonham's thing, he calls it the Led Zeppelin experience, but really it's a Led Zeppelin cover band. It's a tribute band. They play it pretty much like the record, I suppose he does a few different things with his drum solo, but he does the same thing as his dad, kind of copies his dad things. I don't. I mean, I was taught by my dad, so yes, I play a lot like my dad, but I've got my own style. I've taken it to a different level. I've kind of built on where my dad left off.
No, that's definitely true, and I think that people that have no kind of education in music or anything like that would probably just hear that you were Ginger Baker's son and say, oh, he probably sounds the exact same, but that's in my opinion as well, that's not the case at all, which I think is refreshing because that's what some people might expect.
Right, yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, to me, music is my dad was a very big part in drums. He definitely changed rock drumming history. But I mean, it shouldn't stop there. It should keep going. My dad just, people say everything's been done. Everything hasn't been done. There's tons of stuff out there that hasn't been done, and that's what I think. Music has become very stagnant nowadays, and everything kind of sounds the same. Everything's got the same formula. Back in those days when Cream was doing it, everything was up for grabs. There was, you didn't have to have a 4/4 song with a 4/4 chorus. You could put 5/4 in there. I mean, all you need is love. The Beatles song, it's in 7. It's in 7/4. It's got 3/4 bar, 4/4 bar, 3/4 bar. The Beatles did all that kind of stuff and changed. Like White Wolves, 5/4 intro. A lot of 6/8 in Cream stuff as well, and there's bits of 6/8 like in the middle of a 4/4 bar. There's goes into 6/8 for a bit and comes back. So musically, you shouldn't be stuck to like what people do nowadays. Is they stick to this 4/4 thing and everything's verse chorus, solo verse chorus, and that's the formula. Back in those old days, music could be whatever it wanted to be. You were free to write a song and take it wherever you wanted to. And I think that's really missing nowadays. I think it needs to come back and, to do that kind of stuff. But it also has to be, musicians have to be a little bit more schooled and a little bit more better at their instrument rather than nowadays they tend to, maybe it's just because people aren't they don't have the focus they used to. So they just kind of learn it a little bit and go, oh, that's good enough. I can get away with that.
Yeah, that's a very good point. When you look at Pro Tools and all this editing software and stuff, people definitely take advantage of that. I know that there must be a lot of Cream fans listening. You know, they'd hate it if I didn't ask. What can you tell us about your father now? Is there any updates? How's he doing?
He's doing fine. He just got through that heart operation. I'm meant to be playing a show with him in London in November 25th, I think.
Okay.
So we'll see how he can play, if he can play at all. I mean, he says he can play a little bit. So I have to see what happens. But he just had that heart operation, you know. So, I mean, you know, me and my sister were talking about this, you know, about after having an operation like that, what's your quality of life? I mean, you know, if you get diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and stuff like that, and you spend the last 2 years of your life going through chemo, wouldn't you rather take like 6 months and just have a great time rather than trying to, you know, make your life longer with that kind of stuff? So I don't know. I'll have to see when I see my dad and see what his quality of life is.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, some people can get through that pretty good, those heart operations. So I don't really know. I haven't seen him for a little while, so I can't really tell you too much in depth.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thank you for the update, and we hope that everything ends up going great with the gig and everything. And I would just like to remind my listeners that The Forgotten Foot can be purchased over at Amazon.com or .ca if you're here in Canada. Go check that out. Kofi, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. Anytime.
There you go, folks. My exclusive interview with Kofi Baker. Very fun time having him on the program, like I said, and I'm glad you guys listened and came along for the ride. You can check out all things related to Kofi at kofibaker.com. That's Kofi Baker.com. And for past and future episodes of the Cassius Morris Show, you can check out CassiusMorris.com. CassiusMorris.com. We have lots of interviews with media personalities, musicians, comedians, actors, authors, anything you can imagine, including album reviews as well. I have one coming out about Aerosmith's debut record, and I just posted an album review in depth of Drake's Views record, so go check that out, CassiusMorris.com. For any updates personally about me or even about my podcast, especially Cassius Morris on Twitter, at Cassius Morris, and Cassius Morris Show Facebook, facebook.com/Cassius Show. I think it's becoming wildly apparent that I just like saying my own name at this point, so maybe we'll cut it off now. Until next time, this is Cassius Morris saying, rock on.